The day began with silence, but it did not last. Sirens howled across the cities and people rushed into the streets as explosions shook the ground.
Ow.
Buildings collapsed, fires rose into the sky, and the world seemed to fall apart. Soldiers tried to fight back, but they were outmatched. Families screamed as they searched for cover. Air was filled with smoke and fear. Jack Carter stood on the ruined steps of a government building in Washington. He was a man hardened by battles of the past, but nothing compared to what he now saw. Entire districts were burning. The Capitol itself was breaking under the siege. His jaw tightened as he watched the panic spread through the streets. He knew this was not the end of a single city, but the beginning of something far greater. He rushed inside where leaders had gathered. The great chamber was filled with shouting and fear. Men and women in fine suits argued about what to do, their voices loud but empty. Some spoke of giving up. Some spoke of surrender. The sound made Jack's blood boil. He slammed his hand on the table, silencing the room. "You talk of surrender, as if that will save us," Jack said. His voice carried like thunder. "Look outside. Do you think mercy will be shown? No. Do you think kneeling will stop what has begun?" The council members looked at him with tired faces. They were men and women who had never held a rifle, who had never bled in the dirt. One of them, an older man with gray hair, raised his voice. "What else do you suggest, Carter? Our cities are falling, our armies are shattered, we are beaten." Jack stared at him without flinching. "We are not beaten until the last of us is gone. We have the will to fight. I have seen men and women rise from nothing before. I have seen farmers pick up rifles and push back trained armies. We can do it again." Laughter rose from a corner of the chamber. Another council member shook his head. "Your words are brave, but foolish. Do you not see the truth? We are outmatched. We must seek terms before everything is destroyed." Jack's fists clenched. He wanted to shout again, but he saw something that gave him pause. At the far end of the room sat Queen Alexandra. She was young, but her presence silenced those near her. Her eyes were sharp, her posture firm, and she had spoken little during the storm of arguments. Jack saw her watching him now. She did not laugh. She did not sneer. She studied him with a look that was unreadable but strong. Jack straightened his back. "I will not kneel," he said. "If no one else will fight, then I will. I will gather every soldier left, every man, every woman, and we will make them pay for every step they take on our soil. If we must burn, then we burn fighting." The chamber fell silent. Some of the leaders turned away in shame, others in anger. But Queen Alexandra's gaze did not move. For a moment, the weight of the crumbling world rested on her and on Jack. The air felt heavy, the sound of distant explosions shaking the windows. She gave no answer, only silence. But her silence was not weakness. It was thought, and Jack knew it. Outside, smoke covered the horizon. The siege was far from over. The fight was only beginning, and Jack Carter knew that the fate of Earth would not be decided by those who spoke of surrender, but by those who still had the fire to resist. The chamber of the council was filled with smoke from broken lamps and the sound of sirens from outside. The men and women who called themselves leaders sat around the great table with fear carved into their faces. The siege had broken more than buildings. It had broken their courage. They spoke in low voices about surrender, about finding a way to beg for mercy. Their words were heavy with defeat. Jack Carter stood in the center of the room with fire in his eyes. He had faced hopeless battles before, but never had he seen such weakness at the heart of leadership. The memory of burning streets and dying children filled his mind and gave him no room for surrender. "You cannot buy safety with chains," Jack said. "Every moment you waste here means another city falls. Every time you speak of surrender, you spit on those already dead. If you will not fight, then you are worse than those who strike us." The words struck deep. Some turned away in shame, others glared at him with anger. One man, dressed in a dark suit, rose to his feet. His face was pale and his hands shook, but his voice carried across the room. "You are reckless, Carter. You think yourself a savior, but you will drag us all into fire. We must survive in whatever way we can." Jack walked toward him without fear. Survival without honor is death with chains. "You may live on your knees, but I will not." The room erupted again with shouting. Accusations and insults flew. Some shouted for surrender, others begged for order. But once more silence fell when the queen rose from her chair. Queen Alexandra stood tall, her long cloak falling over her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp, and every man and woman at the table felt her gaze cut through their words. She raised her hand, and the chamber went quiet. Her voice was calm but strong. Enough, we stand at the edge of ruin, and the world watches. The council was formed to lead, not to beg, yet I hear only fear. I hear only talk of kneeling. I see one man willing to fight when all others hesitate. Her eyes locked on Jack. The council followed her gaze, and many frowned. She studied him for a long moment before she spoke again. Jack Carter, your fire's dangerous, but so is cowardice. If we must burn, then we burn with swords in hand. But tell me, can you truly forge hope from the ashes? Can you lead those who are broken? Jack held her stare. I can. Not because I am greater than others, but because I will never stop fighting. I will turn fear into strength. I will turn despair into fury. Give me men, give me women, and I will build an army out of the ruins. The queen's lips pressed together. She turned to the council. You speak of surrender while he speaks of resistance. You mock him, yet none of you offer more. Perhaps the fate of Earth will not be decided in this chamber, but on the streets with those still willing to stand. The council was shaken. Some muttered in anger, others in silence. They had hoped for the queen to silence Jack, but instead, she had placed weight on his words. The air in the room was tense and heavy. Jack knew many of them would still plot against him, but he also knew the queen had given him a chance. As the meeting broke apart, leaders left the chamber with faces dark and defeated. Jack stepped into the night air. The city was burning, and the cries of people echoed down the streets. He breathed in the smoke and clenched his fists. The council might plan to kneel, but he would not allow the world to end in shame. He would gather the broken and forge them into something that could fight. And as the fires raged, Jack Carter began to prepare the first steps of the resistance. The night was long and filled with fire. Jack Carter moved through the ruined streets with a small group of men who still trusted his voice. They had once been soldiers, police, and workers, but now they were only survivors. Their clothes were torn, their faces were marked with ash, but their eyes carried a spark that refused to die. Jack stopped in the middle of a broken square where statues lay shattered on the ground. He turned to them and raised his voice. They think we are finished, Jack said. They think we will kneel and beg, but we will not. Every stone here, every body buried under these ruins demands we stand. If you stay with me, I promise you we will make them fear us. The men nodded, their jaws tight, their hands gripping rifles that had seen better days. A young fighter named Daniel stepped forward. His voice was steady, though his hands shook. We will follow you, Jack. Even if we fall fighting. Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. You will not fall alone. None of us will. Word of Jack's defiance began to spread. Survivors whispered his name through burning streets.
Ow!
Groups of men and women came out of hiding, carrying weapons salvaged from wreckage. They brought food, water, and stories of families lost. God. Jack listened to each one, storing their pain as fuel for the battles to come. He trained them in the ruins, teaching them how to fight with discipline and fury. The sound of gunfire echoed as drills filled the nights. Every mistake was corrected, every weakness hardened into strength. Soon the resistance was no longer just a rumor. It was a force. Sabotage strikes began against the enemy's patrols. Explosions lit the night as bridges fell and supply lines burned. The resistance moved like shadows, hitting hard and vanishing before the enemy could respond. For every loss, more fighters joined. For every death, 10 more rose with anger in their hearts. One evening, as the fires dimmed and the city rested, Jack stood watching his fighters train. Queen Alexandra appeared with a small escort. She moved with calm grace, her presence pulling all eyes to her. The fighters stopped and bowed their heads, but Jack stepped forward and met her eyes. You came, Jack said. The queen looked over the training ground. Men and women pushed their bodies to the edge, their faces marked by dirt and determination. I came to see if your words matched your actions, she said, and I see they do. You are building more than an army. You are building a flame. Jack nodded, flame that will burn until the siege is broken. The queen walked closer, lowering her voice. "The council does not trust you. Many there still whisper of surrender.
Ow!
But I have seen enough to know their way is death. You are dangerous, Jack Carter, but sometimes danger is the only hope." Jack did not answer right away. He watched Daniel lead a group through a drill, shouting orders with growing strength. He watched a mother teach her teenage son how to load a rifle. He watched fighters share bread and water with strangers. Finally, he said, "I am not dangerous to our people. I am dangerous only to those who try to crush us." The Queen studied him, then gave a single nod. "Then I will not stop you. Do what must be done." When she left, the fighters looked at Jack with even greater respect. They had heard her words. They knew the Queen's eyes had seen in him what they already believed. That night, the resistance struck harder than ever. Explosions ripped through the enemy's strongholds, and the skies glowed with fire. And in every corner of the city, whispers spread like wildfire. Jack Carter was no longer just a man. He was the shield of Earth, and under his command, the fight for survival had truly begun. The sky over the city burned red as the enemy fleet descended. Jack Carter stood at the edge of a rooftop, his eyes scanning the horizon. Below him, his fighters moved through the streets with precision. Every alley was occupied, every corner prepared for attack. They had trained for this moment, and now the fight was about to begin. The first ships struck with devastating force. Buildings crumbled under the barrage, and flames consumed entire blocks. Jack moved quickly, shouting orders and pointing targets. "Take the streets, hold the squares. Do not let them break through." Men and women ran into the open, firing from behind ruined walls. The enemy advanced, but Jack's fighters held their ground. Explosions shook the streets as bombs fell and rifles fired in response. Every step the enemy took was met with resistance and pain. The people had learned to fight, and they fought like they had no choice but to win. Daniel led a squad through a narrow street, ambushing a group of enemy soldiers. His voice rang out with command. "Push forward, cover the rear, do not let them regroup." Civilians joined the fight where they could, throwing rocks, firing pistols, and setting traps. Each small victory inspired others, and slowly, the tide began to turn. Jack climbed higher to observe the battlefield. He saw the enemy ships over the river, dropping more forces into the city. He gritted his teeth. He could not let them take the bridges. If they cross, the city falls. He grabbed a radio and shouted orders to squads scattered across the city. Bridges were mined, barricades reinforced, and every street prepared for the coming battle. Queen Alexandra arrived with her escort, moving among the fighters. Her presence brought order and courage. She spoke briefly to Jack. "They are stronger in numbers, but weaker in heart. Your people fight for their homes. It is something they cannot match." Jack nodded. "Then we will use that. Hit them where they expect weakness. Let them see the cost of every step they take." The battle raged through the day and into night. Fires lit the skyline, and the roar of fighting echoed across the city. Jack moved from street to street, guiding squads, giving orders, and inspiring courage. Every time a fighter fell, he reminded the others why they fought. Every time a building was lost, he pushed them to hold the next. The people began to believe that they could win. In the heart of the city, Daniel and his squad captured an enemy command post. They signaled Jack, and he rushed with reinforcements. The sight of their leader strengthened the fighters. With every move coordinated by Jack, the enemy was forced back step by step. By nightfall, the enemy had suffered heavy losses. Ships retreated from the skies, and soldiers fled the streets. Fires still burned, but the city held. Jack stood on a rooftop and looked out over the city. His fighters were tired, wounded, but alive. They had taken the first step in reclaiming their world. Queen Alexandra approached him again. "You did what no one believed possible," she said. "The council will be shocked when they hear of this." Jack shook his head. "This is only the beginning. They will come again. You must be ready." The fighters cheered as the enemy withdrew. Jack raised his hand to silence them. "Rest now, but stay alert. Tonight we celebrate survival. Tomorrow we fight to take the rest of what is ours. Earth will not fall while we stand together." The city was battered but alive. In the hearts of its people, a fire burned brighter than any enemy weapon. Jack Carter had led them through the worst and proved that humanity could fight, survive, and rise. The council's fear and doubt had no place in the streets where men and women had learned to resist and to win. The city was quiet in the early morning, but Jack Carter knew it was only the calm before another storm. Fires still burned in parts of the streets, and smoke covered the horizon. Survivors moved carefully, tending to the wounded and gathering supplies. The enemy had been pushed back, but they would return. Jack walked through the streets, his eyes sharp, his mind planning the next steps. Every building, every corner, every person mattered. The fight was far from over. Reports came from all over the city. Squads that had hidden for days emerged with news of victories. Bridges held, enemy patrols destroyed, and civilians joining the resistance. Jack listened to each report, nodded, and gave orders for reinforcement. He knew the council had expected surrender, but they would be shocked to see the strength rising from the ruins. Queen Alexandra appeared at the edge of a square, where a group of survivors had gathered. Her presence calmed them, but she looked at Jack with intensity. They will return stronger. The council is afraid they cannot control the world anymore. They'll try to make deals behind your back. Jack looked at her, his jaw firm. Let them try. We're not the same people they expect. We have learned to fight. We have learned to resist. The council cannot stop what is coming. We will not kneel. We will not beg. Word spread quickly. People who had lost everything were inspired by Jack's courage. They rallied behind him, ready to fight in every street, every building, every square. His fighters moved like a storm, striking quickly and disappearing before the enemy could respond. They had learned patience, strategy, and bravery. Jack knew that when the enemy returned, they would face more than survivors. They would face warriors who would not stop. In the council chamber, leaders were confused and fearful. Reports of Jack's victories filled the room. Some argued to still seek surrender, but the Queen spoke firmly. Jack Carter leads a force that cannot be controlled by fear or politics. The world is no longer in your hands. It is in the hands of those willing to fight and to die for their homes. The council fell silent. They had expected compliance and defeat, but Jack had turned despair into power. Outside, the people were united under a single banner of survival and strength. Jack knew that every man and woman who had joined the fight had become part of a force greater than any army. The enemy launched another attack as the sun reached its peak. Jack moved quickly, directing squads with precision. Explosions shook the city as soldiers and civilians fought side by side. Every street became a battlefield, every rooftop a fortress. Daniel led a group through the enemy lines, cutting them off and forcing retreat. Jack watched the enemy flee, their formations broken, their morale crushed. By evening, the city stood, battered but unbeaten. Jack climbed to the top of a ruined tower and looked across the skyline. Survivors cheered, some wounded, some exhausted, but alive. Queen Alexandra joined him, her face marked with ash and determination. "You have done what many thought impossible," she said. The council is stunned. They have learned that survival is not found in surrender, but in courage. Jack looked at her, then at the city below. This is only the beginning. We will rebuild, we will prepare, and we will never allow fear to rule us again. Earth is ours. We will defend it with everything we have. The people of the city understood that their lives had changed. They had witnessed courage, leadership, and the strength of ordinary humans rising against impossible odds. Jack Carter had become a symbol not just of resistance, but of hope. The council's shock was complete. The world had learned that humanity could fight, survive, and rise stronger than ever. And in every corner of the city, the people knew that as long as they stood together, nothing could break them.